This is everything that you need to know before you play the avatar set for the very first time. And stay to the end because I've got pro tips to help you increase your win rate. So first, let's talk about the new mechanics that are in this set. And every color has a brand new mechanic that's tied to it that matches the avatar world, except for black. Black is more like a supporting color, which I'll get into in a second. So first, let's start with white, which has the new airbending mechanic. And depending on the card, you can airbend either your own permanent or any permanent, including your opponent's permanents. And sagas are going to be great things to target with airbending because then you can recast them and get all of the new abilities. And of course, you're going to want to target anything that has a good ETB or leaves the battlefield trigger like Momo Playful Pet. And also keep in mind that you may cast it for the cost of 2 generic. Sometimes your opponent or you may want to recast the card using the actual mana value because some of them have X spell costs. Next is blue, which has water bending, which is kind of like a combination of Convoke, but you can also use artifacts. And in this set, their version of artifacts that you can tap for free are going to include clue tokens, which also let you draw a card. Now, some of the cards have water bending as a activated ability, like you can see here on Flexible Waterbender. And some cards have water bending as an additional kicker cost whenever you cast it. And you can do this at instant speed for the activated abilities. Next is red with fire bending, and fire bending is going to be followed by a particular number, and the number is what tells you how much red mana you get when the creature attacks. So when you are declaring attacks before blocks, you get additional mana. Now, because you cannot carry mana over into the next phase, you do have to use this mana before the combat phase is over. So obviously you're going to want to use it for combat tricks, for instance, if you have any creatures with prowess, which blue and red is the sub-mechanic is prowess. So you're going to want to make sure that you can calculate your mana effectively before you declare attackers. Maybe you play a sorcery card before combat to buff it up one time, and then you can use your instants or combat tricks for an additional trigger of prowess. And then, of course, some cards actually have the exhaust mechanic, which is not a new mechanic, so I'm not covering it here, but basically it's like an activated ability that you can use one time to buff up or improve one of your creatures or give it another ability. You can also use the firebending mana to pop clue tokens if you don't have any other way to use it, or as you can see here with Fire Sages, there is an activated ability that allows you to spend the mana. And lastly, for the new mechanics is green, which has earth bending, which basically allows you to animate a land by putting +1/+1 counters on it. Now, there are some archetypes that are interested in sacrificing things or with the +1/+1 counter mechanic, so green is going to work nicely in that. And keep in mind, whatever land you airbend or turn into a creature, if it leaves the battlefield, it comes back, so you don't actually go down a card. And I do want to point out, it does not untap the land, so make sure you do have an extra land available so that you can actually attack with it if that's what you want. And you can target the same land with the earth bending ability. So you can earth bend 4, making something a 4/4. And then if you earth bend 4 again, you can target that same land to make it an 8/8. And it is really good for sacrifice fodder because, as I mentioned before, the land does come back tapped on the battlefield. So you'll notice that every color except black has a new mechanic that's attached to it. Black actually doesn't have any new mechanics because I guess there's no like black bending or something. So black, you'll notice, is a really good support color for all of the different color pairs and themes, which is what I'm going to talk about next. And that's why you can see here Azula on the Hunt has both firebending, which is the red mechanic, and also creates clues, which is what the blue and white mechanics want. And you can see on Beetle-Headed Merchants, this one involves sacrificing and +1/+1 counters, which is good for the green deck and for the black decks. All right, so now let's talk about the archetypes. And unlike Spider-Man, this one actually supports all 10 color pairs. And first, let's start with green-red, which is basically a combination of power 4 or greater that matters, as well as a combination of lessons and animating lands. And for all of these color pairs, there is a signpost uncommon that's each of the different individual pairs, and then all of them have a hybrid card, which you can see here at common for Earth Rumble Wrestlers. They all have a hybrid mana cost that will go into either deck. Next is blue-white, and the general theme here is combination of flying as well as artifacts and water bending. So that's why you can see here Air Nomad Legacy pumps your creatures with flying, but also gives you a clue token to draw cards and gives you extra fodder to tap for water bending. And then Cat Owl here basically embodies both of those things. Also not a very good card. So next, let's talk about red-black, and there isn't really a theme to this archetype. It's basically just aggro. So that's why they have a combination of raid and firebending. I wouldn't worry too much or lean into the sacrifice piece of it. It's mostly just an aggro deck that you want to build and get aggressive, get onto the board early. Next, let's talk about green-black. This one is a combination of sacrifice plus animating lands. And so there's going to be cards that are really good sacrifice fodder, and then there's going to be cards that care about having +1/+1 counters on your lands. and again, you can sacrifice these lands that are earthbend because they just come back onto the battlefield, so you're not actually going down a card. Next is blue-red, which is a combination of prowess and lessons and casting non-creature spells for your stuff to get effects. I think Dragonfly Storm is going to be one of the best uncommons in the whole set because it's basically a 2-for-1 and sometimes even a 3-for-1 if there's a lesson card in your graveyard. And then as you can see here, it's a little bit focused on the sorcery and instant theme, but I wouldn't lean too hard into that. The Professor Zay here, not actually a very good card. Next is blue-black, and the whole general theme of this is drawing more than one card in your turn, and then you get some kind of effect. So that's why you want to use these clue tokens very sparingly and strategically whenever you have a good payoff for it. And as you can see here with Foggy Swamp Spirit Keeper, it allows you to actually create additional tokens whenever you draw an additional card. Next is white-black, which is about sacrificing things and then getting abilities or benefits whenever you sacrifice stuff. You're going to want to sacrifice lands, or there's some good creatures that have death triggers, and those are going to be good things. And then there's also cards that create ally tokens, so feel free to sacrifice those tokens for value as well. Next is blue-green, which is basically around the lessons theme and ramping yourself to play bigger spells. And lessons are going to be a little bit different than they were in Strixhaven, where that in Strixhaven you could actually fetch them from your sideboard, but here a lesson is basically just a card type in your main deck. You are not going to be able to get lessons from your sideboard. So there's going to be cards in blue-green that give you payoffs for having lessons in your graveyard, or lets you put lessons back in your hand or go and fetch for them. And Guru Pathic here also points out that there is shrines that are back in this set, and I don't think they're going to be particularly good because you do need to draft multiple copies of them, and they're all uncommons, and some of them the payoffs aren't necessarily worth it, so I'm not really highlighting it here in this video because I don't think it's going to help your win rate. Next is red-white, which is basically a go wide theme, as you can see here with Jet Freedom Fighter. Now this is a little bit of a difficult casting cost because it's triple of the hybrid, and so you really kind of need to be in red-white in order to play this card, but it's a pretty busted card in my opinion because you get a lot of value from it. You get to ETB, deal damage, hopefully kill something, assuming you're going wide. You can probably kill a lot of different creatures, and then when Jet dies, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on up to 2 other creatures, so huge value here. And then as Sun Warriors show you, you basically want to go wide because that allows you to get the firebending up higher, and then you can use it to create more tokens, and it kind of snowballs from there. And the last color pair is green-red, which focuses on the creature type Ally. And I think this is a new creature type, I could be wrong, but basically green and white have the highest concentration of the ally creatures. There are allies spread out in all of the different colors, but most of them are focused in these 2 colors. And you get benefits for casting them or having them in your deck. And then as you can see here with White Lotus reinforcements, there's a anthem for them. And then the sub-theme of green and white is like +1/+1 counters and also going wide for some of the cards. So you can see here that a lot of these color pairs and archetypes will overlap with one another, which is going to give you a lot of flexibility in the draft and in the sealed portion, which I think is going to make this set pretty fun. Okay, so next I want to point out that there are counterspells that are back in this set. There is a quench version, so if your opponent kind of leaves this up, make sure you do want to have 2 extra mana if you want to have your important spell resolve. And then the only other straight up counterspell is this 5 mana one, which is pretty expensive, and it definitely is going to be a good value though, because they'll counter your card and then they'll get to draw a card again and untap a land. So if your opponent has 5 mana up in there in blue, just be a little bit cautious. And then I do want to point out there is a red redirect spell. It is a rare, so you're probably not going to run into it very often, and in my opinion, it's not a very good card. Now, of course, I don't want you to get blown up by any combat tricks, so these are all of the relevant combat tricks that you need to be aware of in this set. The most expensive one costs 3 with Fancy Footwork and How to Start a Riot and Twin Blades. Now, you can see the most of the combat tricks are going to be in red because of the firebending mechanic, obviously, and white. Now, black and blue only have 1 each, and so does green. So if your opponent is not in red or white, you don't have to worry about too many combat tricks. The blue one is basically shore up, so watch out for that. If they have 1 blue up, especially if you're playing on Arena and you see the stopping all the time, that's probably what they have. And then I did want to point out that Razor Rings is not technically a combat trick, but it only works on attacking or blocking creatures. So if you do have something that you really care about that has a good static ability, try not to attack with it unless you absolutely have to. And in addition to combat tricks, you should also be aware of the different board wipes that are in this set. Now, the good news is board wipes are only in 2 colors, in black and white, which I'll show you in a second. The only straight up board wipes are these 2, and they're both in black, so just don't try to overextend too much. But these are a little bit on the expensive side, so if you have the right aggro plan, you may be able to end the game early enough. And the one on the right, the Rise of Sozin as a Saga, is actually just one of the best cards in the whole set in general. Even though it is a Wrath, you should still play it even if you have an aggressive deck, because the backside of this is just busted. I have some kinda board wipes that I want to call out here. So the first one is Avatar's Wrath. This is a rare in white. It lets you keep basically your best creature on the battlefield and then airbend all of the other ones. Now, your opponent or you will not be able to recast them the next turn. So you actually get one full turn cycle where you get to replay your own creatures, or they get to not play theirs, and then you can attack first. So I actually think Avatar's Wrath is better in an aggressive deck as opposed to a controlling deck, because your opponent will still get to play those creatures again, and if they have ETB abilities, they'll get double triggers. And then there is this other one at uncommon, which I'm not sure why they did it at uncommon. You're going to see it pretty frequently, but yeah, each player gets to choose any number of creatures they control with total power 4 or less, and then you lose the other ones. So if you are going wide, like in the red, white, green combinations, just be careful of this one because it's only an uncommon. And then there is a -2/-2 in black as well. But good news, there's only 2 colors that you have to worry about for board wipes: black and white. Okay, next, let's talk about my pro tips for the Avatar set before you go to your pre-release event, or if you're thinking about doing any of the qualifier play-ins or the tournaments on MTG Arena. So in general, I think you should try to play at least 6 removal spells in your deck, and it's okay to splash for removal if you're not able to get to that number. And I've tried to call out one of each of the different colors here in terms of what their hard removal looks like. And if you truly don't have any removal in your sealed pool, then the best way to build around that is to go hyper aggro and use your combat tricks as removal spells. Next, try to play probably 3 colors in your sealed deck. It's very rare that you get a streamlined 2-color sealed deck, but obviously if you can, then the better your mana, the more consistent you'll be, the less mulligans you'll have to take, and the higher your win rate will be. But in general, for sealed, most of you will have to play a minimum of 3 colors. Try to do 2 main colors and a splash. It is okay to splash for removal and big bombs. Now remember, your bombs need to be cards that are only single color pipped, so nothing double pipped, and it has to be a good early and good late. So don't try to take a bomb that's only good for aggro decks or in really situational deck building areas where you maybe need to have 8 copies of a certain creature type or something in order to make it good. Your true bomb should be something that's good early or late and can actually alter the game state or the board state, whether you're ahead or behind. So when you do open up your pool, make sure you check for your fixing abilities. Obviously, if you're in green, you're going to have really good fixing, so I didn't highlight any of that stuff there. But there is a colorless lesson here for Aang's Journey, which lets you do fixing. All of the color pairs have dual lands, and then there is like a Mana Rock Monolith equivalent with Bender's Waterskin that you can use here. And then I also want to point out that there is forest cycling, island cycling, all the different cyclings for all the different colors, and it's just 2 colorless to go ahead and do that. So that can also help you with your fixing as well. Now, if you also want to know what are the best rares for the new Avatar MTG set, you're going to want to watch this video that I have coming up right over here. And make sure you click subscribe because I'm going to be posting more content just like this to help you increase your win rate in the new Avatar set. And I'm going to have draft videos up so you can see how to draft like a Mythic Pro.